Hi, this is Nancy Miller from My Creative Life, and today I'm very excited to have Bunyan Morris today with me. He is an artist. He has been an art teacher in Bullock County. Thank you, Bunyan, for being on my podcast.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I wanted the audience to learn a little bit more about you because you've done so much in your career, and can you tell the audience?
Well, I'm a retired art teacher and now a professional artist. I guess I've always been a professional artist, but I've never really tried to put my work out there and really kind of make any kind of money or anything like that at it until after I retired because it just freed me up, gave me more time. But I live in Statesboro, Georgia, with my life partner Connie and our pup Sophie. And we spend a lot of time, especially now since the COVID-19 thing,
Mhm.
working in our yard, um, gardening and that sort of thing. But we also both like to travel and exercise
Ah,
and that sort of stuff outside of me making art.
that's awesome. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about like the first time you recall that you felt like, oh, I think I'm an artist, that I want to do this full time or, teach it?
Yeah, that may be the most difficult question to answer
Oh,
because I can't remember not feeling that way.
oh,
You know,
really?
as
Yeah.
even as a little kid before I attended school, I grew up on a farm,
Mhm.
and from day one, living on a farm, you have chores and things to do. But when I wasn't doing that, I was always playing outside in the yard, drawing in the sand. I would make little sculptures using sticks. Just a kid entertaining himself. I'd make little sculptures using sticks and leaves, and I would weave the sticks and the leaves together to make little rooftops of little buildings I was making. I'd make things like bows and arrows for when I was playing, forts, all the usual, outdoor, stuff that a boy would do, and girls, but also, I would, in my room, I would draw and paint and sculpt with Play-Doh and that sort of thing. So I was always, always
Mm.
creating. I may not have realized I was an artist at the time, but it was something that I always did.
Gotcha.
So when I was in elementary school, my older sister, she was involved in 4-H, and she got me involved. And
Mhm.
so we would sit at the kitchen table and do different kinds of crafts. And then I would enter those into the state fair, and I won some ribbons, and a little bit of
Mm.
money came along with that. So when we get praise, we love those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And so I just I continue to do that, and so that's just kind of the way I started as a kid.
So, but what kind of led you? Because it's interesting because you're such a prolific art teacher and educator. So, what made you think to become an art teacher and educator?
In high school,
Uh-huh.
I had a what I felt who I felt was a really good art teacher.
Uh-huh.
When I look back on it, because I went to a
Yeah.
very large, even though I grew up in a rural environment, I was in a very large inner city high school in the 70s. It was very
Oh,
crowded. As a
okay.
matter of fact, we were the largest high school population wise in the nation at the time,
Mhm.
just in Macon, Georgia.
Okay.
And so the teacher, the art teacher, Mr. Harold Lee, I look back on it, and he was one of those teachers where he was probably at that point in his career a little overwhelmed because he had very very crowded classes,
Uh,
but he had an eye for students, like we all do, who kind
mhm.
of excelled or whatever, or were super interested or whatever. And so he would spend obviously more time with a lot of time with those students than he did the ones who were just in there just taking the electives.
Mhm.
And so he, spent some time with me. I actually gave me a lot of opportunities. We actually made animated films using
Oh,
8 millimeter cameras.
cool.
I got to experience clay in his classroom and drawing and painting. And like I said, he just took up a lot of time with me
Mhm.
individually. And before that point, this was probably, midway through high school, say, 11th, 10th, 11th grade. And I was actually thinking about going into a field of forestry or maybe wildlife biology or
Oh,
something like that.
oh.
And then it just kind of clicked on me that I thought, think I could do art, and I think but I need to be able to make a living, so I think I'll teach art. And so my passion first was art, and my and teaching was just going to be kind of a means to make a living. And then of course I fell in love with teaching, and then teaching kind of moved ahead of art, so to speak. So that's kind of how I got into that direction.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing because as a teacher or any kind of teacher, but you just touch so many students' lives, like, and I can only imagine how many students you've taught during your career. And then the two art teachers I interviewed said you had an impact on kind of the direction of their career. And I thought that is really cool.
That's something I'm proud of, because knowing that there are other art teachers out there who were my students in high school or elementary school. And actually, Haley Kelly Bond, when I retired from Statesboro High School, she moved into my position. She's one of my former students, and so it was almost like, okay, I've left a little bit of a legacy here, and it made me feel good.
That's awesome.
Made me feel proud.
Yeah, and she's such a good fit for that position. Her personality, her temperament, she has.
Gosh, she's a dynamo.
Yes, and I go like, oh, I want to be in her classroom. I just really, she's so fun, and she's funny. She cracks me up. I go like, she just cracks me up.
She is hilarious. Yeah.
And so I think she's a really great fit, and also just a really nice person too. So great pick there. Yeah. So, yeah. So I wanted to ask, so you do a lot of different types of art, and I'd noticed especially that you've been doing painting. So is that really your favorite type of, thing to work on as far as art-wise, or?
That changes. My real passion is in sculpture and 3D, clay primarily, because it's so versatile. You can do so many things with clay, that you can't do with other art media. And so I started working in clay in undergraduate school. But in getting an art education degree, you become a jack of all trades, because you have to take studio classes in all these different areas, and all these different media. And clay was my favorite. And so, but I only took 2 ceramic classes in undergraduate. I ended up in sculpture. But then when I started graduate school, again, I was getting another art ed degree. And this was when it was Georgia Southern College. We had not become a university yet. This was in the late 80s. So I started graduate school and with the art education degree, and almost lost track of my line of thought there for a second, which is common for me. But I had a lot of studio classes I could take, even though it was an art ed degree. And so every studio class I did in ceramics. I did those with Jane Clay. And we had, it was just such a good experience, such a good learning experience from her.
That's awesome. So are you more of a hand builder, or are you more of a throwing person? Really?
Oh yeah, I can throw well enough to teach someone else the basics of wheel throwing, and that's the way I taught wheel throwing in high school. I didn't, when you know how it is when you've got a classroom of 28 kids, 30 kids, however many you got in there, and you have 3 wheels. Obviously, not everybody's going to get to be on the wheel, and so I would rotate students in and out just to give them an experience on it, and then the ones who really showed an interest, we would work up a schedule so that they would have their time on the wheel to work. And like I said, my experience on the wheel is expertise in the wheel is minimal. I can throw and I can throw well enough to teach someone else how to do it, but hand building, I just feel so much more expressive. It's just so much more you can do with the clay.
Nice. Yeah, I'm more of a hand builder. The throwing, it's fun, but it's so challenging. And I would watch, it's just like some students could do both, but it was like usually you gravitated to one or the other. And the ones that threw, I was just like, oh my goodness, you just made that. And like, I was like, it's fascinating. But everybody has their specialty, but that's so
You know,
cool.
people who
Yeah.
throw seem to have such a great sense of form,
Yeah.
and design,
Hmm.
and 3D design, and not to say that hand builders don't.
Hmm.
We do, but I think it's something about the freedom.
Yes, it is, and it's almost like I don't know. It's kind of one of those things you go like it feels like because I tended to do sculpt a lot of organic like animals and things like that, and it was like kind of bringing something that almost looked like it was alive, but it wasn't quite. I don't know. It's kind of one of those weird things to
Wow, that's
experience.
I can totally relate. That's because my stuff because clay
Yeah.
lends itself towards organic form, but I always like to work in some type of contrast.
Mm.
So a lot of my sculptures in
Yeah.
clay would be wall pieces,
Oh.
and I would use manufactured ceramic tile as
Oh.
a background or a canvas
Okay.
for the clay sculpture that I would then glue to that surface. So you get this
Wow.
contrast of this nice slick, geometric kind of background with this organic form, posed on top of
Wow.
it.
So I was wondering, were there any artists that inspired or kind of helped you develop your sensibilities within art?
In terms of, I assume you're talking about, mainly, famous artists, people we think of.
Hmm.
When I was in graduate
Yeah.
school, I was inspired a good bit by the contemporary artist at
Mm.
the time was Michel Basquiat and
Okay.
Julian Schnabel.
Okay.
And both of them, and Julian Schnabel still working as an artist. Of course, Basquiat unfortunately,
Hmm.
died very early in his career. I'm not sure if he's a member of the 27 Club or not, but he was very
Mm.
very young when he died. And but that both of them are rule breakers. I
Hmm.
mean, they worked with traditional materials in very non-traditional ways.
Mm.
Julian Schnabel worked on large panels or canvases, if you want to call it that, and incorporated broken pottery and broken pieces of china. That's kind of where the inspiration for my pieces I spoke of earlier
Oh.
came from, and then painted on top of those. So we
Wow.
had these rough sculptures that were protruding out from the canvas and that
Hmm.
sort of thing. So just the idea of taking china and
Hmm.
breaking it and then recreating it, or
Yeah.
recreating something new out of it was very very
Yeah.
I don't know, inspiring to me,
Hmm.
exciting.
Yeah. I would.
Yeah. So those and then like for my
Yeah.
painting and stuff that I do now, Kandinsky,
Uh-huh.
Moreau. Those are the really big ones. I really love the work of Rene Magritte, the
Mm.
surrealist. Just the hyper realism of his juxtaposed images. Just it's they're so imaginative.
Wow. I would definitely like to, because I also do some blogging. I would love to include some images of your sculpture and your paintings because that would be great. I always think it's so interesting when you see the visuals that artists create. Like, it's like their alter ego, kind of, so to speak. So I would love
Yeah,
to include
that's kind
that.
of Yeah, that's kind of a limitation with this format,
Yeah,
in terms of there not being, we're so image driven,
yeah,
but
yeah,
this is a podcast, so it's
yeah,
audio, and
yeah.
so when people can't see what you're talking about, sometimes it's more difficult to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I do some blogging, so I'd love to post some images if that's okay of your work
Yes,
or a link to
absolutely,
your website or your social media so people can check that out.
sure, thank you.
So, is there anything in particular? Let's see here. Oh, I almost skipped a question. So, how do you stay motivated? Because, especially when you were an art teacher, because I found it's very difficult because when you're teaching, and
Yeah,
it's a wonderful experience. It's so gratifying being a teacher, any type of teacher, I feel like. And especially with art, because I found I did elementary and high school, but especially like in elementary, it was like the longest running teacher next to their PE or music teacher that they never had, and you could see their development. And then it was really neat because some of them would come back and they'd be like, "Can I share my artwork? I'm in high school. Can I come back and talk to your students and show them what I'm doing?" And I was like, "Really? You want to
Yeah.
come back?" And now it's like some of them are pursuing, the arts, and it's so cool. But how do you
Super
balance
rewarding.
that? How did you balance some of that while you were a teacher and doing your own work and getting your
I didn't
master's
do that.
degree?
Yeah, I did not. Well, when I was getting my master's
Yeah.
degree, this was when Georgia Southern was on a quarter system,
Okay.
and I was doing my classes at night,
Okay.
and
Wow.
so it was I would when
Wow.
you're in your 20s, you
Yeah.
have a lot more energy and can stay up late at night and do things, and then do your art, do your classes. I mean, do your work in the studio, and then on 4 hours sleep, get up and go teach. And at that time, I was teaching in 2 elementary schools.
Wow.
A good portion of I'll teach at one school in a week, teach another school the next week. 35,
Wow.
30 kids in each class, 7 classes a day.
Wow. Yeah.
I had lunch for my planning period most
Wow.
of the time, and pushing a cart as well. The first year I
Wow.
taught at one school, I was pushing a cart from room to room.
Really?
Um, yeah, teaching, and that was a great because I'm not the most organized
Uh-huh.
person in the world, never
Yeah.
have been, and that
Yeah.
really made me have to be organized
Mhm.
because you're going into another teacher's room, you're a
Okay.
guest, the kids are working at their desks,
Oh.
and of course, as an elementary art teacher, we're a lot of times just kind of considered we're giving the teachers a plan, planning
Mhm.
time,
Yeah.
and so I would walk in, the teacher would walk out, and I would have 30 minutes with the kids to do whatever we could do from the cart on their
Wow.
desktops, and so that was pretty taxing.
Yeah.
Um, and so, when I was in graduate school, I was making art because, not
Yeah.
because, well, because I had to, but not because I had to.
Yeah.
I was there because I wanted to be.
Yeah.
So I had to make things. But then once I got out of graduate school and I started teaching, I was teaching full time.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, this, you're putting so
Yeah.
much of your own creativity and your own energy into your students. And when you're
Yeah.
doing that 8 hours a day,
Yes.
and then you come home, art was really the last thing I wanted to do, you know?
Yes.
So
Uh-huh. Yeah.
unfortunately, I guess, unfortunately, I don't know if it is or not.
Uh-huh.
When I was teaching, I didn't make a lot of my own art. It
Mhm.
was very sporadic.
Mhm.
During the summers, I would work, and sometimes on Saturdays or something like
Mhm.
that. But by the time all my creativity had been like trying to inspire my kids, trying to give
Mhm.
my kids ideas. You know how it
Mhm.
is. Or
Yes.
you give this great presentation, and you send the kids to work, especially with the older kids, middle
Yes.
school and high school kids older. Then they're up there. What do I do?
Mhm.
Oh, well, I just showed you, and
Yeah.
so there, you got to have to give all this
Yeah.
individual, inspiration and all that to your students, and
Mhm.
then kind of my creativity had been drained for the day.
Gotcha.
So I did not do a good
Yeah.
job of managing my own time, I guess, and sanity, for lack of a better way of putting
Mhm.
it, in making my own art a lot while I was teaching.
Gotcha.
And I think that is added to the how I'm approaching art now that I'm retired,
Oh, okay.
and I have time to put into it now. So now I'm really feeling what it feels like to be a professional artist,
That's
in a
wonderful.
sense.
No,
I mean, the
yeah.
fortunate thing in that is that I
Yeah.
do have a retirement, so
Yeah.
I'm not having to put food on the table for
Yeah.
my family, by
Yeah.
selling my art. So
Yeah.
it's so sometimes it feels kind of funny to refer to myself as a professional artist because I do,
Absolutely.
make art. I
Yeah.
do sell it, when I
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
I do try to get into shows and that sort of
Yeah.
thing, but my financial life
Mm.
doesn't depend on it.
I think that's great. I mean, I think that's something that the things that you had mentioned, it makes me feel like, oh, that's kind of, I had to make a choice at a certain point because I felt like I was very exhausted from graduate school and just working full time as a teacher and then also coaching. And yeah, I totally understand. It does feel like you've just squeezed your mind of all creativity because of all the, just the feedback you give to your students, and then just how you're going to do, your lessons. You have to be very flexible, whether you're in elementary or high school, I found, and all of the things that you're doing. And so, but yeah, do
Not to
you?
mention,
Yeah.
not to mention all the responsibilities as
Hmm.
a teacher outside of the classroom. You know,
Hmm.
I've always been the one where when I
Yeah.
go inside the classroom and I
Yeah.
shut the door and it's just me and the kids, I
Yeah.
am in the place where I am supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
all the other stuff that, it's some of it necessary, some of it
Yeah.
not, but all the other stuff that, the duties and the
Yeah.
administrative stuff and the paperwork and all the other stuff that, most teachers don't enjoy doing.
Hmm.
That kind of, I don't know, where some of it's necessary, some of it
Yeah.
also gets in the way of education. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah. So, but now that you're retired, do you tend to work? I always wonder, like, do you treat it like your job, like Monday through Fridays? I'm gonna be painting so many hours. Do you keep it flexible? Do you, you
are you
know?
kidding? No. I've never been that structured in my
Okay.
life, but I do try to do something, every day,
Hmm.
and it depends on what I'm on. Like if I'm on a painting and
Hmm.
and it's really coming along and everything, I'll work 8 hours and on it,
Okay.
and I mean I'll take breaks, but
Hmm.
I'll work on it all day long for several days, and sometimes I just have to back away from it,
Yes.
because you'll make what I think is a mistake, or
Uh-huh.
I'll just get stuck, and then I'll back away from it for 2 or 3 days, or a week, or sometimes even a month,
Hmm.
and then come back to that particular piece. I may be working on something else in the meantime, but that's you have another. It's I'm supposed I should be kind of, if I want to make
Hmm.
money and if I want to be a
Yeah.
professional artist, I probably should be running this like a
Uh-huh.
business, where okay, today is creating day, today
Mm.
is packing and shipping day,
Okay.
today is this, that, what I'm saying.
Yes.
And I'm just not a business person. That's
Yeah.
just not my style, and I think
Hmm.
that's true for a
Yes.
large number of artists.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
So, and some people it just comes naturally.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, so I mean, I'm always a work in progress in that area. I love making stuff. It's like at the end of it, how do I send this out? So that's always been the fun part of figuring things out. So I was wondering,
yeah.
is there anything you wanted to share that you're currently working on, art-wise?
I'm still, like I say, you mentioned working at gouache, and
Mm-hmm.
I do consider myself now a painter, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm painting because uh, it's convenient,
Mm-hmm.
for so to speak,
Yes.
over working in clay or other materials, because painting's portable, and
Mm-hmm.
I can paint wherever I want, wherever I want to be. And so I kind of fell into that,
Okay.
and I'm working in gouache, which I had never worked in before, or at least I didn't realize I
Yeah.
had worked in it, because I just, I'd always worked in acrylic
Okay.
or watercolor,
Yeah.
and what a gouache is really it's an opaque watercolor
Yeah.
for those who don't know,
Yeah.
um, and I found I had an old set of
Oh,
gouache Winsor Newton tins. I still
okay.
have them. When I started teaching at Statesboro High School, the art
Oh.
teacher who was there before me
Mhm.
retired, and she just basically walked out of the room. I don't know if she
Uh-huh.
took a thing with her. And so in her
Yeah.
desk, yeah,
Yeah.
and in her desk were these two tins of designer
Uh-huh.
gouache, and I just kind of stored them off to the side and never
Okay.
really paid any attention to them. And then eventually I got them out and started painting with them. I thought, wow. And I realized they're just adult tempera paints.
Mm.
They behave just like
Nice.
watercolor,
Yeah.
but you can get this opacity where you can just get these bright, beautiful
Hmm.
colors, but then you can also water them down to get these beautiful washes. So again, freedom. freedom of expression with this media that's so versatile. And so I've always been interested in nature
Uh-huh.
and outdoors. And so a lot of my work is inspired from nature. But it's all very fantastic, very
Mm.
colorful. You've seen it, all
Yeah.
just, very, very abstract, these little
Mhm.
kind of subaquatic environments and outdoor environments that look like they could be on another planet but belong
Mhm.
here on Earth. I just don't know.
Mhm.
And so, but the latest piece I've been working on has been in that line as kind of an organic kind of with a landscape feel, but I've been doing pointillism, and
Oh, wow.
that's painstaking and takes a long
Yeah.
time. Not the entire piece,
Oh,
portions of it
okay.
are in pointillism. So
Wow.
that's what I've been working on the most lately,
Uh-huh.
in terms of that goes. But I also picked up a couple of gigs with an local elementary
Oh,
school and local middle school, painting, doing lettering on some
nice.
signs with motivational slogans and school logo and stuff like that. And that's not really my thing,
Uh-huh.
but it pushed me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And when I was approached by a principal about doing that for him,
Wow.
or actually her,
Yeah.
and it's I had fun doing it, and it's a
Yeah.
paying job.
Yeah.
We're artists. We're going to pick up a gig wherever we can.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw the lettering on your Instagram. You had some of the images posted from that. I thought
yeah,
that
yeah. I
was really
played I played
nice.
around with some what do you call it,
Yeah.
the type of photography where you can move, very quickly, time lapse. I couldn't think of it.
Cool.
I did a time lapse video of that. It was kind of fun. That was the first time
Yeah.
I'd done one of those.
Yeah, I think it's great. All the little videos, things. You're like, I guess as a art teacher or just a teacher in general, people, you get very adaptable and you're willing to learn new things. And I thought it was really cool. It's
Mhm.
like he's retired, but he's doing all these cool little videos. He's got his lighting and all that. It looks really nice. I was like, oh my gosh, he's got it going on. So was that just something you
Oh,
just kind of was like, because I think that's really cool because it's like, I think, well, in terms of being an artist and also being an art teacher, you're willing to try new stuff,
yeah,
and see if it works
yeah,
or not. And I appreciated the tip on the lighting. I got to figure out if I can put in my budget to get one of those. So,
yeah, yeah. It's worth it. I've got my little ring light over here, kind of pushed off to the side, but it's definitely worth it, in terms of being able just to light right up close to what, because I use it,
mm,
for painting. It clips onto my easel, it clips onto
okay.
my tabletop, and it puts the light, and you can set different. A warm light, a cool light, high contrast. You
Oh,
can adjust the brightness on it. So there are a lot of things you can do. But you know what? I am not a technological person. The
uh-huh.
videos and all that stuff, I can't tell you how long. It probably takes me, hours to set it up and to do it, and then to
Oh,
edit it, and then to put it
uh-huh.
together. Whereas, one of my students, I could probably hand it to them, and they could do it, in 30 minutes or less. It's just. But I enjoy the challenge and trying to, YouTube has become my friend in
Yes.
terms of learning how to do some of those things
Yes, I
and
agree.
getting ideas for them.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I like watching people work as far as their painting, their technique and things like that. And whenever somebody's been doing it so long, you just see, like, granted they're speed painting, so it's quicker,
Yeah,
but you can get a sense of the mastery. So I always go like, "Oh, how many hours till they just got it to be so effortless to know, like, what colors they want to use, how their concepts reading and all different kinds of things." I always go like, it's always still like magic to me. Even though I like doing art, I go like, oh, I don't know how to do that, but I go like, wow, that
yeah.
looks like magic.
We're,
So
we remain little kids, we
yeah,
still with that kind of sense of wonder, I think.
yeah. So I greatly appreciate you sharing this, your knowledge on that and the things that you're learning. That's so cool. And I wanted to ask you, so probably, is your where is your favorite place? Or can you talk a little bit about, as far as your studio, how you have it set up and things like that?
Well, actually, I just moved my studio from a spare bedroom in the house
Mm,
out. I have a shed in the backyard, and which doubles as a storage space
okay.
and a very very small studio space.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to see how that works out.
Okay.
It was just becoming too cluttered
Mm-hmm.
in the house, and it's running out of space and that sort of thing. And out there, I can spill paint on the floor, and I can do whatever. And plus, it's really
Yeah.
easy because I have a really nice easel for for
Okay.
gouache
Uh,
that I can paint on it vertically, but I can also flip it
oh,
horizontally like a tabletop,
nice.
and so I
Oh,
can move
wow.
that outside, which goes
Wow.
to my favorite place to make art is,
Okay.
and my favorite place to be is outdoors.
Nice.
Um, but I've had some pretty good opportunities
Yeah.
too to do some live, what I call
Oh,
live painting, live performance painting, or live
okay.
painting performances, whatever you want to call it.
Cool.
At music festivals, and
Oh,
here actually at a performance at the Averitt Center,
okay.
and also at the local brewery and any place else that I could get while
Wow.
a band is playing.
Uh-huh.
I'm in the back of the audience or off to
Uh-huh.
the side of the stage or somewhere painting while they're
Uh-huh.
playing.
Oh, cool.
And so, in that, I get to interact with the people who are there because they
Hmm.
come up, and they'll ask me questions and that sort of thing, and also, sell art while I'm doing that.
Yeah.
But also, it's music has always been a big part of my life, and
Mm.
being able to paint while someone else is performing and to get inspiration from that,
Hmm.
especially at outdoor music festivals.
Mm.
I was so disappointed because I had gotten
Oh.
accepted to paint at the Charleston Bluegrass Festival back
Oh.
in March or April, and of
Wow.
course with COVID-19, it got
Yeah.
canceled.
Oh.
But I've done some other music festivals, and it's
Uh-huh.
just such a great uh, environment because
Hmm.
people are there to become immersed in music
Hmm.
and art, and to be a part of that whole vibe,
Hmm.
because it's just such a positive vibe. Is
Hmm.
very very inspiring. It really is. And
Wow.
so if I had to pick a place as my
Hmm.
favorite place to paint, it would be
Okay.
at like a music festival.
Oh, neat. Oh man, that is so cool. Like I could
Yeah,
see your paintings really lending himself because I was gonna say like some of them felt very like I could see the inspirations that you were talking about earlier in the work and I was like it feels like it's rhythmic and it kind of has this movement to it. So yeah, I could definitely see that in the work and that it would be a great place, a chance to interact with people who share the same
right.
interests. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
So I was going to ask next about, oh goodness, um, lost my train of thought on because I just got so fascinated by all of that. Um, so basically, what's the most valuable item that you would say you could not live without as an artist?
Oh, as a painter, I'll answer that as a painter
Oh,
because I
okay.
think it would change depending on what, if you're talking actually literally, something that
Yeah.
a tool,
Yes.
it would have to be my easel, because of the
Oh,
versatility of it,
okay.
because I can take it wherever I go,
Yes.
and it provides me a surface to work on. Probably the most valuable, most
Hmm.
indispensable item for anyone, any
Yeah.
artist, I would think, would be a sketchbook.
Yeah.
Because you've got to have a sketchbook
Hmm.
because that's where so much good work comes from,
Hmm.
and practice,
Yes.
and all of that.
Yes, definitely. So, it's kind of interesting because you've retired out of teaching, and I know this wasn't really one of the questions I had, but it just kind of came to mind.
Yeah.
Um, like, I guess, what was a bit of advice that you gave your students? Because you saw the ones that probably were really interested in the arts. Was there any kind of practical advice that you would give them about pursuing a career in the arts, or just kind of some
Gosh,
wisdom that you passed down to them?
Give me a second on that one.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to throw you off, but I
No,
was
that's
like,
okay. No,
it just
that's a
came to
big one.
mind. I was like, oh.
Well, okay. Well, it's no secret that you gave me some of the questions before we started, and I'm going to give an answer that I came up with for another question
Okay.
because you gave me this question that was like, what are the three final truths that you would
Oh,
give
yeah. I was
to
good. Yeah,
me?
that's always my last question.
Yeah, well, I'm going
Yeah.
to go ahead and answer it for
Okay.
you, just
Okay.
just to, just to answer this question because my first response was, "Wow, it's getting deep now." Just my and this is not necessarily advice as an artist, but it's just for anything because as a teacher, I was an art teacher, but
Yeah.
I just felt like I was a teacher,
Mhm.
I wanted my classroom to be, and a lot of kids have come back and
Mhm.
said this, or kids, some of them
Mhm.
are in their 40s, have said that your classroom was my safe spot, my safe
Mhm.
place. Because I had kids that would come in, the ones who didn't want to go hang out in the lunchroom or didn't want to
Yeah.
go hang out in the front of the school or whatever before school started. There's always one or two kids who come to the art room and either work on projects or
Mhm.
just come in and just hang out or help me take the tables down off the chairs and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. And they weren't always my best art students. They
Mhm.
weren't always those, even some of them weren't even my students. Some of them were just friends
Mm.
of my students. And so I
Okay.
always felt really good about that.
Okay.
I felt that was approachable. And so I guess, my advice to my students and anybody first is just, live simply,
Mhm.
just there's that saying, live simply so that others might live,
Mhm.
and give more than you take. That was something that
Mm.
I was taught as a kid by
Mhm.
my parents, and all the golden rule.
Mhm.
Always, treat other people the way you want to be treated. And my dad, growing up in our rural environment, he was always really good to our neighbors that had
Mhm.
the other farms and other places, always sharing our, whatever we produced on the farm with other
Mm.
people. And he was kind of a jack of all trades. And he was
Mhm.
always, somebody had something that was broken or whatever, he would go and help repair it, or would repair it for them. And he never charged anybody. That was
Mm.
just his way of giving and giving back. And so that's always kind of stuck with me,
Mhm.
to give more than you take,
Mhm.
and stay true to who you are, no
Mhm.
matter who that is, as long as as long as you are kind of following what I've already said.
Mhm.
Don't let somebody else decide who you are. You know, you decide who you are and who you're going to be, and it's going to be okay.
Mhm. Well, those are great words of encouragement and wisdom, and I really greatly appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise as an artist and as an art educator. And yeah, your former students have some wonderful things to say about you and your influences, and it still continues today. So that's one of the great
Well,
joys of
thank
being
you.
a teacher. So thank you.
Well, the funny thing is, I could see myself, maybe not
Yeah,
full time, but I could see myself walking back into a
really.
classroom even now. Yeah,
Wow.
it's
S-
even after
Yeah.
being out for a couple of years,
Oh,
I still find that I miss it.
oh yeah.
The non-teaching part, not so much, but
Hmm.
being in the classroom, like I said, with my door shut, it's just
Yeah.
me and the kids interacting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I miss that.
Yeah, definitely. That's wonderful. But well,
But I
yeah.
do, just one little thing. I
Oh
do
yeah.
get to do a little bit of that at the Averett Center,
Oh,
Averett Center for the
nice.
Arts here. I teach some classes there.
Oh, I didn't realize
And
that.
the funny thing is, most of my
Yeah.
students though are adults.
Uh-huh.
Many of them older than I am,
Okay.
and that's super rewarding too.
Oh,
It's a
that
whole new,
nice.
different audience.
Exactly. Yeah, I got fortunate. I decided I wanted to see if I like teaching adults, and I did a continuing education class for drawing with GSU here in Savannah, and I loved it. It was great. It was a night class, and it's
Mhm.
people who were retired or this was just something that they really had wanted to pursue. So if you're coming to a
Yeah,
night class from 6 to 9 and you have a full-time job, then you really want to be there. And so it was just a real joy. They were wonderful. They were
no
all
pressure.
yeah, they were just excited to be there and just try new things and talk about their art and we could talk for hours about their art. It was just, just about
Oh
what they were
yeah.
thinking and what, where they wanted to go with it. It was like, and it fascinated to me because they had already had, very strong careers in like healthcare or whatever field they were in and done some amazing things that I was so impressed with. And then they come in and want to draw and just, enjoy the process and get better at it. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it is. It's very rewarding.
yes. Well, thank you, Bunyan, for sharing all of your knowledge and expertise. Would you be okay with doing a shout out for where people can see your work? I'll post it in my blog, but if they hear this and they want to go check it out right away.
Yeah, I have a website and I'm on Instagram. I don't use Facebook so much.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too much other stuff on there. I do have a Facebook page, but
Yeah.
I just anyway I am so long. I'll pick the longest, most convoluted name for my studio that I could possibly do, but it's okay. It's called Ichi Gichi Studio.
Okay.
ECHEEGEECHEE Studio.
Mm-hmm.
.com.
Okay.
And so that's my website, and that's also my Instagram page where you can see my artwork there and kind of keep up with me on a daily thing.
Great. Well, I'll also put it in the description box of this podcast and
Great.
people can check it out. But, well,
All
thank
right.
you again. And everybody, thank you for listening to My Creative Life.
Thank you, Nancy. It's been my pleasure.
You're welcome.